The story begins in the middle of a vast forest where hero Alan, who uses a powerful Excalibur skill, together with his party, are seen fighting off evil creatures one after the other. Since Alan together with the other party members continually use a lot of mana, someone has to replenish it for them while they are busy serving monsters a can of whooping pie. This is where Ishua enters the picture. Ishua is gifted with infinite mana that enables him to help others stay in good shape while fighting, when everyone is busy casting off magic here and there. Ishua, on the other hand, is busy replenishing them with the mana, tanking death with raw optimism and vibes. A few days later, after their fight in the forest, Alan told Ishua that he had now officially been banished from the group. Ishua was confused about what's happening since this is just so sudden. Aside from that, Ishua knows that he's a vital member of the party, and without him, everyone's mana will easily run out. Alan immediately shuts him down, saying that they don't need him anymore and that the party has never been short of mana. Alan has always been jealous of Ishua ever since Ishua joined the group. Despite Ishua not being a warrior or a hero like Alan, Ishua never failed to make the girls fawn over him, and Alan is jealous of that. Alan's ego and pride tells him to kick Ishua out so that he can get back all the attention that once belonged to him. So even if it wasn't really a collective decision by the whole party, Alan lied to Ishua, telling him that it was indeed the case. This really surprised Ishua as he never really expected to be kicked out of the group. After all, his job as a manaporter is really essential, especially in a party setting where everyone constantly uses their energy to fight. As a manaporter, Ishua knows that he is an important part of the group. With his infinite mana, Ishua has constantly been supplying energy to the other members during battles. However, since Ishua can't really cast magic and fight during close combat and are just complete behind-the-scenes workers, some people, like Alan, consider him as a loser instead of a member. However, Ishua's party was filled with flashy jobs that consume a lot of mana, so without him, Ishua is certain that this group won't last long in battle. Despite him being a bit disappointed with the group's decision to kick him out all of a sudden, Ishua is still worried about what will happen to them without his help. But since this is everyone's decision, Ishua had no choice but to accept his fate. As Ishua parts from Alan and walks through the forest, lost in thought, a voice calls his name. He turns to see Arya the Saint and his junior crying. She asks why he abandoned them. Confused, at that moment Ishua finally realizes Alan lied. Arya, feeling betrayed, is now furious and is on the verge of starting her villain arc. Ishua immediately tried to calm her down, as this dark aura she is emitting is unbecoming of a saint. Despite that, Ishua is still relieved that Arya understood he didn't mean to leave them at all. But now that they've already known what Alan is up to, Arya decided to just follow Ishua from now on and abandon the party as well. This shocked Ishua since he knew very well how Arya had been trying her best to get into the heroes' party since they were still at the academy. However, none of that is important for Arya. For her, staying by Ishua's side is far more fulfilling than staying in a party with a jealous psycho hero like Alan. Aside from that, Ishua has been helping her ever since they were students, so Arya feels like she needs to return the favor and stay loyal to Ishua no matter what. Since that was such a moving speech, Ishua couldn't help but take her in. But before anything else, Ishua also wonders how Arya even managed to find him in such a vast forest so easily. Arya panicked a little hearing Ishua's question. While sweating because of nervousness, Arya mumbled her answer, barely loud enough for Ishua to hear. As it turned out, she coincidentally had some of Ishua's hair, which she used her search magic on. But that weird fact is set aside for now, and Arya wonders what they are going to do now. Ishua plans on going to the nearby town to prepare for their trip for the time being until someone calls for help. Immediately, the two rush to the place where they hear the scream come. To their surprise, a wagon with a few people is surrounded by wolf-like creatures that are about to attack. Without hesitation, Ishua tells Arya that they should try to help these people out. While Ishua is busy trying to make a plan on how to defeat these creatures and help these people get back to safety, Arya is out here treating a life or death battle like it's a live-action romance drama, looking at Ishua with such twinkling eyes, admiring how brave and selfless he is when it comes to other people. Meanwhile, Ishua already had a rough idea of what these monsters were. Although he is no hero or mage, Ishua has always been an observant, keenly looking at every monster they come across during battle and taking note of their strengths and weaknesses. These monsters in particular are B-rank monsters, Although they are a difficult opponent for beginner adventurers, Ishua is confident they'll be able to manage beating the juice out of these scary-looking fluffy monsters, considering he is literally with one of the most famous and powerful saints in the country known for her geniusness, Arya. However, she was a genius until she wasn't. Arya ended up casually casting one of the top-level magic spells and put out multi-chant enhancements. She starts being too enthusiastic, and Ishua is out here trying to adjust everything to her. Ishua tries his best to deliberately pour magical power with an attribute that repels the magic circle. Although what just Ishua did should reduce the spell's power, Arya ended up going a bit too far and flew too close to the magic sun that she burned all her brain cells as she decided to go with her double chant called Innocent Shine, causing every impurities around the area to get wiped out in an instant. And because of that, the place has become a sacred place. But despite that, Ishua is still relieved since they still managed to do the job in the end. After all that, the man who owns the wagon asks the two who they are. So to thank them for their help, the man decided to take them to a tavern and buy them some drinks as well as guide them towards the village. Over some drinks, the man expresses how amazed he is to witness such powerful magic in person. According to him, for the longest time he has been alive, this is the first time he has heard of such powerful magic that can be activated through magical power transfers. Well, it turns out that normally, that is actually impossible to achieve. However, with the help and power of Ishua, the two are able to make the impossible possible. To better explain it, Arya went on to elaborate on how the spell works. According to her, she herself cannot activate a spell on that scare on her own. But with the help of Ishua and his bottomless supply of mana can easily adjust and optimize any magic power, even if it is just his first time seeing it. A lady servant then came in and handed Ishua and Arya some unrefined hue nuts to enjoy with their drink. Ishua gets shocked when the man suddenly calls her out, telling her not to give his lifesavers. The lady servant then explains that since they've been short on mana lately, this is all they've got. Curious to know what the girl meant, Ishua went on to ask the wagon owner about it. The wagon owner then explains that since their village is quite small, they can't really maintain the refinery, let alone the farming equipment. Originally, their specialty was made from hue nuts squeezed through a refiner. But due to a lack of maintenance, production volume has fallen. And because of that, the village can't afford to spend money on maintenance anymore, so they are now stuck in a vicious spiral. In fact, the villagers even started accepting the fact that in the not-too-distant future, the village will ultimately meet its downfall. After hearing this, Ishua immediately stands up and gives the wagon owner the sweetest smile ever. With such a genuine tone, Ishua states that he is willing to give them a hand with their mana problem. Immediately, the wagon owner starts refusing Ishua's offer, saying that he asked them to stop by to thank them for their help, not cause them more trouble. However, no matter what the wagon owner says, Ishua has already decided to help this village no matter what, showcasing what a good-natured person he really is. As they went on to check the village's mana tanks, Ishua was rather surprised to see how terrible their conditions were. However, he knows there is still something he can do about it. So with much optimism, Ishua shows off his power to everyone. With full charge, Ishua poured as much mana as he could inside the village reservoirs. Pouring the mana from his body into a non-human object is something Ishua has already done before, since he was in charge of maintaining the magical items of the hero's party. Doing all of this was just an easy job for him. But aside from that, Ishua's usage of his mana also has more good attributes to it, as it also repels dirt, hence why the rusty old mana tanks now look squeaky clean and new. Aside from giving them some of his mana, Ishua also repaired the magic circle for the villagers so that they would be able to use it for a long time. After doing all that work by himself and really having no reason to say sorry at all, Ishua still apologized to the villagers, calling his work an amateurish process. The villagers then assured him that what he did was more than enough for them. The fact that he poured all the mana into that massive amount of equipment by himself is already amazing by itself. For the villagers, this kind of process is equivalent to the work of several engineers. Meanwhile, still stunned by what he witnessed, the wagon owner wonders just who Ishua really is. Ishua, not ashamed of his role, proudly states that he is just a manaporter. However, the wagon owner can't bring himself to believe such a thing. After all, what Ishua just did is something not a normal manaporter can do. On top of that, after finding out that Arya is actually a saint, even added doubts to the wagon owner's mind on whether Ishua is actually telling him the truth. Based on how Ishua acts and presents himself, plus his undeniably amazing power, It is quite normal for people to mistake him for a hero. So even if he isn't actually one, the wagon owner started calling him the hero of the village. As everyone starts to have a weird misunderstanding of his identity, Ishua tries to ask for Arya's help. But to his surprise, even Arya is also looking at him with the same klutz looks as the others. Everyone then started cheering now that their village had been finally saved. They then plan on throwing a big party full of drinks to celebrate the moment the same day. Ishua tried calling out their attention, wanting to clear things up. However, the villagers don't even care to listen to him. Instead, they all assured him that even though they don't know what his circumstances are, they still see him as their hero, even if he does not term himself as one. One villager then expresses that she has seen a lot of scoundrels pretending to be the hero. But Ishua is the first one she met that actually acts like a real hero. Modest and kind. At this point, Ishua finally realizes that no matter what he says, the people in this village will never listen to him. To make it even worse, Arya started hopping into the van wagon and agreed with the villagers as well. Fast forward, during the celebration that the villagers prepared for Ishua. Ishua suddenly notices how strange Arya is acting right now, until he finally realizes that she has already drunk a lot of alcohol. As her face starts to turn red, Ishua tries to take the cup away from her. However, no matter how much Ishua tried, Arya kept on enjoying the rest of the night, wilding and drinking as if she was not a saint. Meanwhile, the real hero Alan, together with his remaining members Mythia and Little, are planning to enter a dark cave to explore its inside. Alan has a wild idea to explore an rank dungeon without their manaporter, Ishua. Although the two girls are quite against his plans, Alan looks rather decided about it, and no matter what they say, he'll go in no matter what. On top of that, even if Ishua is not around anymore, the fact that these girls still rely on and mention him throughout their quest, Alan can't help but roll his eyes in annoyance. Angry, Alan went on to tell his members to just shut up and follow his lead, while insecurely stating that he is certain there won't be a problem, even if that incompetent person is not present at all. And just like that, this is how the story of a fallen hero, and a manaporter who would later be called a hero began. Going back to Axis Village. Now that Ishua and Arya have finally finished their job here in the village, the two finally said goodbye to everyone. Even till the end, the villagers still showed their respect to the two and kept on calling Ishua their hero. Awkwardly, Ishua still tries to tell them that he is not the hero even till the end. Knowing Ishua is saying this from a good nature, Arya tells him that it is fine to let these people call him their hero. After all, Ishua is the one who saved their village from the verge of collapsing. Now that their work here is done, Arya asks Ishua where they should go next. Ishua, with a plan in mind, tells Arya that he wants to return his hero's party license and register as an adventurer in the newcomer town of Norbish. Around that same time, Alan, together with Little and Mythia, was now fighting as many monsters as they could. Alan is quite happy considering they were able to manage getting far into the A-rank dungeon. Dungeons around the world are ranked from E to SS by the Adventurers Guild. Even beginner adventurers can conquer E rank, but even veterans can be wiped out on an A-rank dungeon. That is why, despite initially doing good during their first fights inside the dungeon, Mythia reminds Alan that they have to think about the mana for their return trip. Without Ishua to replenish their mana and Arya to heal them, the party couldn't afford to get hurt even for a bit. Alan, who didn't mention to the two girls that he was the one who kicked Ishua out of the party, and also the one who lied to Arya that's why she went to find Ishua on her own, tried to fake his frustration, shaming Ishua and Arya for being so-called cowards running away in fear of an A-rank dungeon. Although Alan was pretty confident at first, that all changed in an instant. To Alan's surprise, Mythia's magic swords are not working as they should. For the nth time now, Mythia has been trying to tell Alan that there is no way possible they would be able to go on with this mission without Ishua and Arya. However, Alan, who is full of himself, won't listen to a single word until life personally dropkicks him with a lesson. But Alan still dared to talk all high, telling Mythia that if she thinks she wouldn't survive without a useless man-porter like Ishua beside her, then she shouldn't call herself a member of the heroes party from now on. But before Alan can even formulate a plan to get out of this dungeon alive, his head starts aching like crazy, as if Karma is hosting a concert in his brain with a full sound system. Despite Alan literally running out of mana himself, he kept denying the fact that this would be possible for him to experience, considering this had never happened to him before. In fact, Alan has more mana reserves than an ordinary person. As long as he uses normal skills, he won't have to worry about mana shortages at all. However, the hero's skill, Holy Sword, consumes a huge amount of mana. Originally, Alan was supposed to experience a mana shortage by becoming a hero, but because he immediately formed a party with Ishua at the king's command, Alan came this far without experiencing it, and he has finally realized how much he actually needed Ishua. After all, this fact really hit Alan hard. For the longest time now, Alan believed that he was stronger than everyone in the group, and that the party needed him more than he needed them. But truth slaps Alan hard. Alan has been defeating these monsters without any trouble up until now. But now, these same monsters Alan has easily been destroying before now see them as mere food, not as threats. Completely scared for his life, Alan rushes out of the battle and asks Little to follow and protect him at all costs. Alan is willing to leave Mythia, who is fighting for her life, to make sure he is safe. Alan even dared to say that his life is more important than the life of a mere magic swordswoman like Mythia. Now that Little finally realized what a trash of a hero Alan really is, Little decided to turn her back on him and fight with Mythia instead. Since, for Little, abandoning a friend who is fighting for her life for the sake of others doesn't make someone a hero, and that Alan should be ashamed that he calls himself one. Despite not having enough mana herself, Little, with only courage and loyalty for her friend within her, steps in and helps. Although Little is a sage, she ended up using a physical attack to help Mythia no matter what. At that moment, literally only Mythia and Little are the ones who are fighting, while Alan is whining like a baby on the side. Fortunately, Little and Mythia are not as bad as Alan. Despite what he just said, the two girls decided not to abandon him, no matter what. Although it took them quite a long time to make it back to the outside world, the party somehow managed to get out in the end. Despite their life or death experience inside, Little and Mythia were still thankful that they experienced it. Because of what happened, it is clear to them now that they were just relying on Mythia's magic sword, and that they were slacking off on their swordsmanship practice. But instead of just being thankful that Mythia and Little even cared to save him, Alan still had the audacity to yell at the girls, telling them that they shouldn't be smiling at all as they retreated without being able to conquer the dungeon at all. Alan kept on bringing up unnecessary comments from Little, being a sage, and using her staff for physical attack. To Mythia, the magic swordsman, for using a mere dagger to fight. Mythia tried to make him understand the graveness of the situation they were in a while ago. But no matter what Mythia says, Alan is already blinded by his own thoughts, completely blocking all criticisms and comments regarding him. At that moment, Mythia and Little finally had enough of him. And with such a displeased expression painted on their faces, Mythia and Little just let Alan be. But the look they gave him was quite eerie. Even Alan was taken aback a little. Since they've already had enough for the day, the girls tell Alan that they should take a rest in a nearby village for now. Meanwhile, Alan is literally shaking in anger, quite not accepting the fact that the girls gave him a disdainful look just a while ago. After a while, Alan and his party made it to Axis Village, the same village Arya and Ishua were at earlier. As soon as they step into the place, the villagers welcome them with enthusiasm. Alan, being so full of himself, went on to say his title as the hero to everyone without even having the urge to stay humble. Alan went on to explain that they were trying to look for an inn to stay in as they were having a hard time clearing the dungeon. After hearing the word hero, the villagers immediately got excited since this means another hero has come to stay in their place. Curious to know who the other hero this villager is talking about that came in before them, Alan immediately asks about it. When the villager mentioned Ishua and Arya's names, Alan got shocked and started bad-mouthing the two. After hearing such indespicable words coming out of Alan's mouth towards Ishua, the villager couldn't help but get angry at him. Alan himself also cannot help but release his frustration from all that has been happening to them, and accidentally, he slipped, stating that he was the one who got Ishua banished from the party for spouting nonsense about supplying mana. After hearing the news, Mythia and Little were shocked since all this time they thought that Ishua had left on his own accord. Alan, completely not reading the room, still went on to demand the villagers to give him the best inn and bring him all the recovery and mana potions as soon as possible. But since Alan and his party are new to the place, just to be sure, one of the villagers asks Alan if he has money to pay for the services he requested. With his party not succeeding on their quest, it was obvious that Alan had no money at all and is literally broke at the moment. But since Alan feels like the people owe him for being a hero, he went on to tell everyone that collecting items in town is one of the hero's privileges, so he tried to take advantage of this privilege and told everyone that they should cooperate no matter what. Even Mythia and Little were shocked by Alan's unhero-like actions. After hearing Alan say those words, the villagers were not happy about it. At that moment, it is already pretty obvious that the party is not welcome in the village anymore. The villagers start gathering, bringing with them their weapons to push away these so-called heroes out of their village at all costs. After what Alan did, the villagers now see him as a fake hero who just wanted to take advantage of them. Alan tried to tell everyone that if there is a fake hero, it's Ishua and not him. However, the villagers wouldn't believe such a thing at all, considering Ishua didn't even accept a thank you from them, compared to Alan, who keeps flaunting his so-called privileges as a hero. Despite them being the real heroes' party, Ishua and Arya pretty much already captured everyone's hearts. At that moment, Alan, Mythia, and Little had no choice but to leave since there was no way the villagers would still let them stay after that chaos. On their way back to the forest to look for a place to stay for the night, Mythia immediately confronted Alan for the lies he had made them believe. Alan, already pissed off at what just happened in the dungeon plus with the villagers a while ago, tells Mythia to shut up. Angry, Alan went on to tell the two the truth that he indeed kicked out Ishua because he sees him as an incompetent who isn't worthy of being in the heroes' party. At that point, Mythia couldn't even believe that Alan's petty reason almost had them all slewed. Knowing Ishua has always been kind to them, Mythia plans on going after him and Arya to apologize, and she wants Alan to come as well. She tried being reasonable with him, telling him that he should know by now that it is impossible to beat in a ranked dungeon without Ishua. But instead of listening, Alan didn't want to do anything Mythia had just said. Alan is even telling them to stop holding him back and telling him what to do. After all, Alan still has the highest authority in the group, so he warns them that if they don't shut up, he can just easily kick them out of the group if he wants to. However, saying those words out loud was the biggest mistake Alan made so far. With that same undaunted look they gave him a while ago, Mythia and Little tell him that he often says things like that. But now that Alan has already brought it up, Mythia and Little ended up doing as he told them to do and leaving the party willingly. After all, for them, without Ishua in the group, they don't have any attachment to Alan anymore. Aside from that, after what happened inside the dungeon earlier, Little thinks that Alan is not worthy of being a hero anymore. She knows that if they keep following him, they'll surely lose their life. At that very moment, Alan finally realized what a mess he had just caused. Knowing that with all his members now leaving him, Alan tried to stop the two from doing so, trying to make them feel guilty. Instead of apologizing, Alan still followed his ego and started bringing up the fact that without him, Mythia and Little wouldn't be in any hero's party at all. However, none of those worked with the girls at all. Alan starts losing it, saying he is a renowned hero throughout the world, so there is no way these two will just leave his party that easily. However, Mythia and Little have already decided. After all that happened, the last thing these girls want is to get involved with such a baby-minded leader who only thinks about himself. Now that they have officially left the party, Mythia and Little wonder what they should do next. Since Ishua didn't really abandon them, Mythia and Little are planning to team up with him again. So using Little's detection skill and Ishua's hair that she happened to have just like Arya, the girls managed to detect that Ishua and Arya are heading to the newcomers' town, Norbish. Meanwhile, alone and without a party, Alan looks rather angry and frustrated that those girls really left him for Ishua. Since he can't possibly form a new party that easily, Alan decided to recruit Ishua, thinking that Ishua still needs him. Using his party discovery, a unique skill of the hero that identifies the location of his own party license holder, Alan managed to locate Ishua's location as well. At this point, all the ex-party members are now on their way to the newcomers' town, Norbish. After traveling by land for a couple of hours, Ishua and Arya finally made it to the Norbish Adventurers Guild. There, the two of them gave up their status as members of the hero party and are now registering as new adventurers. For them to know their current standing as an adventurer, they need to measure their status by placing their hands on a crystal ball. Each status is classified into F to S ranks. For instance, if your status is at the average level, you are considered an F rank. However, if your status is above a rank, you'll be respected by your peers. So let's just say this crystal dictates one's true power and place in the field. As Ishua went on to check his status, everyone was stunned to see the crystal ball glowing like crazy. Although Ishua has a bottomless mana power, as a manaporter, he shouldn't be supposed to have this high status. But the crystal says otherwise, since based on the measurement it showed, Ishua has an MP of triple SSS. At first, everyone didn't want to believe this was even possible. However, when Arya gave her seal of approval, assuring everyone that the crystal is not lying about Ishua's rank, everyone just couldn't believe it was even possible. With that, despite them being newly registered adventurers, Arya and Ishua ended up being regarded as C-rank adventurers, which simply means they are far different than many people. Immediately, everyone in the guild starts giving them invitations, asking them if they want to join their party and whatnot. Due to the loud commotion, Diana, a sword saint, steps in to silence everyone. Diana belongs to the party of the hero Lillian, who defeated Ifrit, one of the 4 heavenly kings under the direct control of the demon lord. Diana immediately apologized to Ishua on behalf of the guild members. At first, Ishua thought that she was here just to control the crowd, but it turns out that she is like the others as well. As soon as Diana finally got close to Ishua, she immediately asked him if he would like to join their party. At this point, rather than getting shocked, Ishua is amused at the fact that the Sword Saint Diana is actually participating in a surprise recruitment battle with the other guild members. Although this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Ishua still decided to turn Diana's invitation down, explaining that he and Arya had already decided to work together alone for a while. Diana tried persuading Ishua to join, so Arya stepped in to tell her that Ishua had a hard time with a hero who didn't understand his ability. Diana is quick to defend their leader, saying that Lillian is not that kind of person. However, Arya didn't want to risk it, considering how someone would trust a leader who won't even come to meet a member he wants to get himself. Diana immediately understood Arya's point and tried to explain everything, but just couldn't say the words. But to avoid any awkwardness, Ishua assures Diana that he believes this Lillian is a fine person, just like how he feels towards her. And to better make Diana understand their situation, Ishua said the truth that he had just been banished, hence why he would like to work with only members he knows for now. After hearing that, Diana immediately respected Ishua's decision. But she can't help but cry at the fact that she failed in her important task of recruiting Ishua. Despite Diana looking like a crybaby, Ishua can easily tell she has great abilities by just looking at her demeanor. If it wasn't just for the timing, Ishua is certain that he might actually have accepted their offer. After failing to recruit Ishua, Diana went on to sadly deliver the news to their hero, Lillian. Surprisingly, Lillian looks like a child herself. But don't let this look deceive you. Lillian is actually a genius girl who acquired the hero job immediately after being born. Her fame has increased even more after she cornered one of the 4 heavenly kings. Despite that, Diana has always seen her continue her training stoically without becoming arrogant. However, her responsibilities as a hero took away her time to enjoy her youth. Even her emotions have become diluted, or so it should be. After hearing the news, Lillian couldn't stop crying and ran towards Diana like a baby looking for her mother. As Lillian clings to Diana's side, she goes on to ask if Ishua hates her for some reason. Diana then assures her that it is not the case at all. However, it would be a lot better if Lillian were the one who asked Ishua herself. But that is the only thing Lillian can't make herself do. As surprising as it may seem, Ishua is actually Lillian's first love. There was no information as to how they even met. But Diana herself can't believe that just finding out Ishua is in the same town as them would make Lillian such a total wreck. However, despite how shy she is, Lillian is dedicated to getting closer to Ishua no matter what. So instead of just accepting the fact that Ishua declined their offer, Lillian plans on doing everything they can just to be able to join Ishua and Arya's quest no matter what. And Lillian plans on doing that by helping them when they need it the most. Although this may look a bit too much to some, Diana is happy seeing Lillian finally acting her age, falling in love, and doing everything just to be close to the person she likes. Diana is even hoping this would be a good encounter for her beloved leader. The next morning, Ishua and Arya are planning to begin their first quest as adventurers. But to their surprise, the board is crowded with people racing to get the quest they wanted. However, Ishua managed to notice that there were some requests left on the table. As they went on to check it, the requests are something they really like doing. So immediately, Ishua took all the requests, which shocked the guild's receptionist. Well, as it turns out, these requests are actually the ones that most adventurers see as not good enough. Those requests are left abandoned because the reward is not worth the effort and difficulty. However, that is not the case with Ishua and Arya. In fact, it looked like they really enjoyed doing their quest to find a cat. As they went down the city to look for the said cat, Ishua used his mana power to attract all the cats in the area to go towards them. Within just 30 minutes, the two managed to fulfill their first quest. Meanwhile, Diana and Lillian are tailing them behind, trying to hide in the shadows as much as possible. Over the next hours, Arya and Ishua went on to continue fulfilling the requests they took in, from wiping off an undead army in the cemetery to kicking bad guys at the filtering company. Since fighting the bad guys from the rival company would cause a lot of damage to the reactors, Ishua decided to use one of his best techniques called the mana ring field. It is a technique that develops high concentration mana to increase mana recovery power, but if one is not used to it, they'll get headaches and nausea, especially for those who don't have magic-based jobs. However, some of the thugs are actually adventurers hired for money. Since the mana ring field will not work on them, Ishua used another technique to take them down. He injected mana into one of the guys with force. This mana oversupply will cause even more powerful magical intoxication. And just like that, the man instantly lost his consciousness. Diana, who is still trailing behind the two, was rather surprised to witness such powerful delivery of skills. At that moment, Diana finally realized that Ishua's SSS magical power isn't just for show, although they planned on staying behind in case Ishua and Arya needed some help. But at this rate, the situation where Ishua would need their help will never come. Meanwhile, Alan finally made it to the town of newcomers, Norbish. A few days later, Ishua and Arya pretty much became quite popular among the adventurers because of them taking on unprofitable requests one after another. As they were about to take in some new requests, someone came into the guild that neither Arya nor Ishua had expected, and it was none other than Alan. But what really shocked Arya and Ishua is the fact that Alan came in alone. Ishua didn't even have to ask him about what happened since Alan himself revealed he banished the two out of the party just like he did to Ishua a few days back. Having no idea about what Ishua and Arya are doing now, Alan assumes that they have become F-rank adventurers in this tiny town. Little did Alan know, Arya and Ishua had become one of the strongest and most popular adventurers in the whole guild in just a span of a few days. But since Alan knew none of those things, he went on to embarrass himself as he went on telling Ishua and Arya that he wants them back to his hero's party. While Alan keeps on talking rubbish, still full of himself as usual, everyone inside the guild is already laughing at him. Confused at what is happening, Alan asks everyone what's so funny about what he said. Since pretty much everyone in the guild has heard about the story of a stupid hero that banished Ishua, just thinking that Alan is actually here right now, blabbering nonsense just makes it all so funny. So to humble him a little, the other adventurers went on to inform him that both Arya and Ishua are not F-rankers, but instead C-rankers. Even Alan, who is already a hero, knew that newcomers acquiring such a rank is not common at all, which simply means that Ishua is beyond the norm. Alan was hoping that Ishua would be crying right now, begging him to take him in again. However, things are far beyond what Alan had expected. Alan never really imagined people would love Ishua this much. And to top that, Alan wasn't prepared when Ishua ended up declining his offer so casually, as if Ishua was telling Alan indirectly that he never really needed him in the first place. At this point, Alan is already on the verge of exploding. The fact that one of his old members, whom Alan termed useless, has casually refused his offer really crushed Alan's ego. As Alan is about to take out his sword and fight Ishua to the death, Diana steps in to stop him. With such an intimidating look on her face, Diana warned Alan that fighting within the guild is strictly forbidden. So if Alan still wants to pull out his weapon, then he'll have to fight Diana first. Because of Diana's intimidating energy, Alan ended up stepping back and left the guild immediately. Ishua tried to chase after him, but Alan just moved too fast. Now that Diana has finally met Alan, she has come to realize what Arya was trying to tell him about Ishua the other day. Witnessing how Alan is just cruel and selfish, Diana is hoping Alan won't cause any trouble for Arya and Ishua in the future. Fast forward, after that incident, Arya and Ishua steadily worked their way through all the dud requests. Then one day, about a week later, they received a request asking them to go to the elf village and report anything unusual to the guild. The reward for the request is a whopping 30 gold coins, making this request something that every adventurer will fight each other for to get. However, this doesn't just add up, since almost every request laid on the table is considered a dud request, which means this request is supposed to have a low reward, but for it to be worth 30 gold coins with no one wanting it made Ishua suspicious. Ishua also finds it strange that the client's name is not disclosed. Since Ishua can't afford to put Arya in danger with a strange request, he was willing to not accept the request at all. However, as Ishua was about to put the request back, the receptionist persuades him to take it. Then eventually the receptionist revealed that since Ishua and Arya have been doing a great job and taking in dud requests almost every day, the guild decided to treat them by giving them a special request. To ensure that none of the other adventurers notice it, the guild decided to camouflage it as a dud request. The guild just wanted to give Ishua a request with great pay. On top of that, they also made it relatively easy to fulfill. In fact, so easy that it would feel like Ishua and Arya are just sightseeing or vacationing. Although Ishua actually has no plans on accepting the offer. But after seeing how excited Arya is, Ishua can't help but give her what she wants. After all, Ishua is aware of the fact that he was immersed in quests and made Arya help him finish them. So this is the least he can do for her. Meanwhile, Lillian, who is listening to the whole conversation, decided to follow Ishua and Arya to the elf village as well. Diana tried to make Lillian understand that what they are doing is useless, since no matter what they do, Ishua and Arya would never need their help. However, instead of listening, Lillian kept going and asked to take requests from around the elf village. As the receptionists went on to check on it, the only thing they have right now is a request asking the mutated species of an ogre king to be defeated. But what's shocking about this request is the fact that it is in a rank request. For the longest time now, the guild has undertaken most of the difficult requests, so seeing one here now is a bit shocking for the receptionist. Although this is quite a hard request not all adventurers can do, but since this is Diana and Lillian, the receptionist wasn't that worried at all. Fast forward 3 days later, Ishua and Arya have finally made it to the Elf Kingdom. They were able to know they were already near as soon as they saw the world tree Yggdrasil. According to the legends, an angel sowed a seed of miracle in a land ruled by monsters, and the large tree that grew from that seed purified the miasma that gave birth to monsters. After that, people began to live on the surrounding land. Arya really loved the story about the world tree. That is why she is extra excited to finally see it in person. However, while Arya is excited, Ishua is a bit worried since he can feel there is something odd about the flow of mana in the world tree. But Ishua is still hoping he is just imagining things, as it would really spoil the fun for Arya. Meanwhile, Diana and Lillian have also finally made it to the Elf Kingdom. But compared to Arya and Ishua, they are both facing a bunch of monsters before finally stumbling upon the mutated Ogre King. Diana was confident that she would be able to cut this monster down in no time. But to her surprise, defeating this variant wouldn't be a breeze at all. No matter how hard Diana tries to hit the monster with her sword, her strikes aren't working on him. Based on the looks of it, the monsters in the area must have undergone a promotion where they end up possessing the strength of a higher class, making them stronger than before. So if that is the case, this Orc King must have absorbed plenty of the miasma that it eventually got promoted to S rank. Immediately, Lillian and Diana went into place and prepared to initiate their attacks. Lillian was born with a hero skill. That is, in exchange for a huge amount of magical power, Lillian can transport the party and enemies to a virtual world of his own creation. In this space, Diana and Lillian can fight under absolutely advantageous conditions, so Diana was confident they would be able to defeat this orc in no time. However, their special move that hit one of the 4 heavenly kings didn't even work on this variant orc. At this point, Lillian and Diana are starting to get worried as this might be the end for them if they don't think fast. Since Lillian's mana is already running out, Diana tries her very best to defeat the orc while Lillian can still maintain her fantasy world. However, no matter how much Diana tries, the orc is just too powerful for her to defeat. Eventually, Diana ended up getting batted down, causing Lillian to panic a little. As Lillian's hope starts to diminish, someone unexpectedly comes in to help. To Lillian's surprise, it is none other than Ishua. This place is an inviolable territory that only Lillian can control, so unless anyone has her permission, no one would be permitted to enter or leave. And yet, Ishua and Arya still managed to do so. But fortunately for Lillian, thanks to Ishua and Arya's sudden appearance, she was saved from a deadly attack by the orc. Seeing Ishua in person after a long time stunned Lillian so much. At that moment, Lillian couldn't help reminiscing about the first time she saw Ishua near the castle. Meanwhile, Ishua, on the other hand, looks confused as to how even Lillian knew his name. But before Ishua can even ask Lillian about it, Arya calls for his attention to check on Diana, who is now bleeding to death. Seeing Diana lying on the ground unconscious even made things more confusing for Ishua. Aside from that, even Ishua himself doesn't know how he managed to get into this space. So to know how, let's rewind back a few hours ago. When Arya and Ishua finally made it to the elf village's gate, Arya felt sad after hearing that visiting the world tree at the moment is not allowed since only authorized personnel are allowed to enter. Arya, whining like a baby, tried to persuade the guard to let them in, stating that the travel guide says the village is open for tours. However, no matter what Arya says, the guards are meant to follow the orders. To release her frustration, Arya decided to single-handedly take down nothing but rank monsters scattered around the forests surrounding the elf village. Even Ishua is quite excited about this adventure, as it feels like they are in the demon realm or something. Arya's face, on the other hand, looked like a loading screen, buffering in confusion as she didn't really realize until now that she was fighting against rank monsters. The miasma is getting so thick around this area of the forest, so Ishua decided to put up his mana link field to increase mana recovery. Aside from that, this technique also helps in filtering the air within the area of effect, which makes it even more useful for Arya and Ishua. As they start to stroll around the area, Ishua can't help but express the bad feeling he is feeling right now. Ever since they entered the elf village territory, Ishua has been getting an uneasy vibe from the surroundings. On top of that, with this concentration of miasma, this place is no longer an environment where people can live. Then suddenly, Ishua felt a strange feeling and immediately went on to check on it with Arya. As they reached the area, the two were shocked to witness that the space was being artificially distorted right before their eyes. Ishua immediately analyzed its magical configuration, and before they even knew it, a portal opened directing them to where Diana and Lillian were. When Ishua explained this to Lillian, Lillian was so surprised since never in her life had she witnessed someone managing to analyze part of her fantasy world. In fact, even Lillian herself can't fully analyze her own spell. With that said, Lillian now has more reasons to admire Ishua. Before they could even continue their chit-chat, the Orc King suddenly went whooping with his weapons once again. This time around, Lillian and Diana managed to restore her mana with the help of Ishua. Ishua gave them a small tip on how to defeat the monster, stating that the miasma filling this creature can be neutralized using opposing mana to cancel it out. Immediately, Lillian went on to try engaging in a close contact battle with the Orc King, and just as expected, she did really well as a hero. At this point, Ishua starts to wonder who Lillian really is, and before he knew it, Lillian assures him that she will try to buy them time to escape, swearing it on her pride of being a hero. At that moment, Ishua finally realized that this was the same Lillian Diana was talking about back at the guild. Ishua, not used to being protected as he is the one who usually protects everyone, admired Lillian's bravery for sacrificing her life to make sure they are safe. Lillian and Diana have lost hope in defeating this Orc King. However, with Ishua and Arya around, that wouldn't be the case anymore. Using their usual formation, Ishua tells Arya to be in place and assures the others that he will cover all the mana costs so they can use their skills without limit. On top of that, with Arya on the side, Diana and Lillian can ensure that they'll continuously get buffs and healing powers throughout the fight. However, despite their effort, they only manage to leave a scratch on the monster's body. So Ishua decided to step in and pour as much mana with holy attributes into the monster. With this, Ishua was able to neutralize the miasma that the Orc King had absorbed, transforming him back to how he was before the promotion. And just like that, the group managed to take down one of the hardest rank monsters today. After the fight, Diana officially introduced Lillian to the two. Knowing Ishua is Lillian's first love, Lillian can't help but get all shy and blush a little just knowing the fact that Ishua is standing right in front of him. Ishua, being the friendly guy that he is, went closer to Lillian, informing her that he was surprised when he found out that she was actually a hero, considering they had already met at the castle when he was invited to Alan's party before. Just the fact that Ishua remembered her made Lillian's heart beat like crazy, as if there was a full-blown parade in her stomach. Although Lillian is certainly more timid than Arya, Ishua is happy to finally meet her in person. Now that the formal introductions are done, Diana finally expresses her confusion. The miasma overload in the area shouldn't be possible, considering this place is so close to the World Tree. Since they can't simply dive into their own conclusions without investigating, Ishua suggested that they should head back to the elf village and let Lillian talk to the guards, hoping that with a hero, the villagers might explain the situation to them. But before they can even head back to the village, the World Tree starts to wither. Hastily, Lillian and the others immediately head to the elf village gates, hoping that the elves will finally tell them what is going on. At first, the guard was quite unsure whether he should trust these people. But when Lillian revealed that she was a hero who came to investigate the area around the elf village, the elf immediately lowered his guard. He then went on to reveal that he was just worried Lillian and the others would be another fake one, just like the man who called himself a hero and entered the village a few days back. Immediately, Ishua, along with the others, rushed into the village as soon as they were permitted to do so. They then went on to inspect the area, and when they finally reached the central area, Ishua suddenly heard a familiar voice. As they went on to check on it, Ishua and Arya were shocked to see Alan is actually the one the elves are referring to as the fake hero. A few days back, Alan, who was staying at Norbish, had received a summons from the king and returned to the royal capital. There, the king has asked him to present his accomplishments, to which Alan worries about. Now that his members have left him for good, reporting his accomplishment now feels like a punishment to an egoistic man like Alan. Alan tried his best to dodge the question like it's a flying flip-flop, telling the king the same things over and over again. However, the king already had enough of his nonsense and now wants to hear the real deal. To make it worse for Alan's pride, despite Ishua not being here, the king keeps on bringing him up. But at that moment, Alan had no choice but to swallow his pride, since if the king found out that he was the only one left at the party, for sure, Alan would receive an awful lecture from the king. To avoid getting a bit suspicious with his answers, Alan played it safe and just stated that Alan is not feeling well and that Arya is with him, together with the other members. At first, the king has a bit of bad feeling about Alan and is contemplating whether he should believe whatever this man is saying. But in the end, the king let Alan go while giving him an urgent quest to fulfill as well. And this quest will take place in the elf village. Without any party to come with him, Alan ended up going to the elf village alone. Despite knowing that the forest surrounding the area is filled with rank monsters, Alan was still confident that he would be able to go through it in no time. After a few hours of traveling, Alan finally made it to the elf village gate without encountering any monsters. There, Alan told the elf guard that he was sent by the king to investigate the area. However, the guard didn't want to allow him to enter the village without permission. Until Chelsea, the elf queen, allowed him to. The moment Alan saw her, Alan couldn't help but admire her beauty. Meanwhile, Chelsea then takes him into the village to show him what's really going on. But before entering, the elf guard warns Alan not to do anything strange, as it may develop into a major turmoil that engulfs the world. Although hearing such words was definitely scary even for a hero like Alan, Alan tried to keep calm and just listen to whatever story it is the elven tribe would tell him. But to Alan's surprise, almost every elf he comes across looks gloomy. He finally understood why when Chelsea finally showed him the current condition of the Yggdrasil tree. It turned out that the Yggdrasil is now rapidly losing its vitality. On top of that, the miasma purification isn't going as well as they'd hoped, meaning the monsters are getting more violent, and if this continues, the entire region will eventually become uninhabitable. But before he can even make up excuses to leave the village and let these people deal with their problems on their own, Alan suddenly remembered that he needed to show off to the king no matter what. So despite him not having any idea how to fix this problem, Alan pretended as if he had a plan in mind. However, things didn't seem to go as he wanted them to. Despite Alan being a hero, the only spells he knows are basic healing magic. Thinking that he could fool these elves with his fake show, Alan went on to cast his healing magic in hopes that the tree would be cured in no time. Alan is so naive for him to think that doing simple magic will make these elves believe he is actually making a difference. However, that is exactly what Alan didn't think of at all. As Alan went on to proudly cast his spell, confident that these elves would bow down to him in no time, Alan was rather shocked when he heard the elves chatter in disappointment at his fake show. Still in denial that he is not as powerful as he thinks he is, Alan really tried his best to redeem himself and let these elves see what he is really capable of. However, the more he tries to be someone he is not, the more Alan makes a fool out of himself. So out of frustration, Alan ended up acting rashly, cutting the roots of the tree without consulting the elves, thinking this would stop the miasma from spreading. But because of Alan's foolish and childish act, now the miasma is starting to spread through the trunk. The elf queen, Chelsea, at this point is already furious, baffled by what happened to her kingdom. She then shouted at Alan, telling him that those roots he just cut are the tree's defensive instinct. It was literally the tree's last line of defense against the miasma, and now that Alan has cut it, it's over for everyone. At this point, Alan starts to finally break down. Now that people are calling him a fake hero and a demon king, the pride and power that he always tried to preserve have now been tarnished by his actions. Then all of a sudden, someone called him, a familiar voice that is. As Alan turned his head, he was furious seeing Ishua at the same place where he was once again. Meanwhile, Ishua and Arya are worried about what Alan did this time. The queen of the elves, Chelsea, then went on to tell Ishua and the others about what happened. Immediately, Ishua asked for the queen's permission to allow him to heal the tree while there is still time. At first, Chelsea was having doubts about Ishua's credibility as a healer, considering what had just happened when they trusted Alan earlier. But with Lillian's assurance and Ishua's genuine gaze, Queen Chelsea gave her permission in the end. Immediately, Ishua went on to analyze the tree first. As expected, the mana inside ain't flowing smoothly anymore. The impurity caused by the miasma is severely impeding the circulation of mana. With the miasma spreading this far, even if Ishua tries to neutralize it, the world tree will die first. That is why Ishua plans on restoring the part that isolates the miasma that Alan severed first. To achieve that, Ishua created a mana hole, aka a distorted magic circle that will suck the miasma in. With the help of Lillian, Ishua managed to execute the plan smoothly as well. Seeing the improvement with the tree, Queen Chelsea couldn't help but wonder just who on earth Ishua is. With such a humble tone, Ishua went on to state that no matter what they call him, he is just a mere manaporter. However, because of what happened to the world tree a while ago, the monsters have now become more active, and the elven village is now being swarmed by them. Knowing that Ishua and Lillian can't stop the treatment of the world tree for now, Diana and Arya assure them that they don't need to worry, as they will make sure everything will be under control in no time. With that said, while Ishua and Lillian are trying their best to treat the world tree with the best they can, Diana and Arya also did their parts on the front lines. As the fight started, Diana and Arya tried their best to help the elves fight off the monsters. Although they did pretty good, the elves can't help but wonder how long they can hold off this many monsters. Since the world tree is so big, Lillian and Ishua are having a hard time treating it, so the elves, as well as Diana and Arya at the front lines, don't have any choice but to hold off for as long as possible. However, based on the Queen Chelsea's observation, although the miasma is being sucked out steadily, but it looks like the monsters will get inside the village first before the tree gets cured. So Queen Chelsea ordered as many men as she could to head out to the fate and defend the village for as long as they could. Meanwhile, it looks like Ishua is starting to see some progress with their treatment. The miasma has faded, and mana is starting to flow. However, it's taking a bit longer than expected, and the walls are already given in. On top of that, Diana and Arya are also losing a lot of mana, so at this point, they are already on the verge of accepting this might be their end. Until two familiar people show up to help, and these are none other than Little and Mythia. But before that, let's first look at the journey that Little and Mythia had before arriving here. On their way to Norbish, the girls stumbled upon some soldiers who needed help. Knowing that Ishua would definitely help them if he were there, Little and Mythia didn't even hesitate to bring them to safety. Although they had plans on seeing Ishua as soon as possible, the girls had no choice but to escort the group after they were saved to ensure they reached their destinations alive. Although where these people are going is totally in the opposite direction from the Norbish village, the girls still went to do it anyway. But to Little's surprise, when they got to the village, the people they helped prepared a feast just for them. As it turned out, the wagon was actually carrying the medicine that would treat the Lord's daughter's illness. Because of how thankful the Lord is to both of them, he insisted that they should stay even for one night. Although Little and Mythia got invited for just a sleepover, it pretty much turned into a mini vacation since they ended up staying for a whole week. So when they finally had the chance to leave, Little and Mythia didn't waste even a minute and went straight to the Norbish village. But to their dismay, they found out that Ishua was not there anymore. After knowing that Ishua went to the elven village, Little and Mythia didn't waste a minute and chased after them. Shortly afterwards, the king issued an order prohibiting entry to the area around the village. Since, when it comes to the king, Mythia and Little are very obedient, they ended up just fulfilling all the requests that Ishua left back at the guild. However, fate has its own way. While they were fulfilling a quest, the girls ended up getting attacked by a bird that is now heading towards the elven village. Despite Little and Mythia not wanting to break the king's orders, fate really had its own ways of helping them cross paths with Ishua again. And just like that, on their way to the world tree where the bird's nest might be located, they saw Arya and Diana fighting a bunch of monsters. Seeing them really made Arya happy. Aside from that, Arya is also quite amazed at the fact that over the past few weeks, Mythia and Little got much better at fighting while conserving mana, maybe because they had to consider that Ishua wasn't with them anymore. Witnessing how amazing these girls are, Diana can't help but feel a sense of disappointment towards Alan for wasting such a powerful party. and over the next few minutes, Lillian also steps in, informing everyone that they have already set up the mana hole, and in just a few more minutes, everything will be under control already. But for the meantime, the 5 girls decided to hold off as many monsters as they could, all for the sake of saving this village and helping Ishua. Now that Ishua is literally pouring everything he has to save this tree, Queen Chelsea and the other elves slowly notice that the falling of the leaves is gradually slowing down. Now that they have already put up enough mana holes, all that's left for Ishua to do is neutralize the miasma by pouring in the opposing mana and recover the lost circulatory function. Meanwhile, the elves couldn't help but be amazed by how powerful Ishua is. Compared to any ordinary people or elves, the fact that Ishua still managed to inject a huge amount of mana into the world tree, even after generating that many magic circles, is indeed commendable. Ishua's power is so powerful that it even exceeds Queen Chelsea's. But what's even more commendable about Ishua is the fact that he could deliver mana to every corner of the tree without putting a strain on the branches and leaves, something only powerful magicians can do. Meanwhile, going back to Ishua. With much concentration, Ishua finally cured the tree that many elves were having a hard time treating. As the leaves started to grow rapidly again, the hope in the elven tribe finally came back in. Within seconds, the world tree Yggdrasil has finally come back to life. Because of this, Queen Chelsea can't help but cry. All this time, she thought that it would be the end of her people, but because of Ishua and the others, they can finally live a normal life once again. Meanwhile, at the front lines, everyone is celebrating after the monsters started retreating. Now that the purification function of the tree has returned, the monsters are weakening, hence why they are retreating from battle. At that moment, the girls started cheering as they managed to defend the village like they wanted to. After adding some finishing touches, Ishua finally turned over the tree to Queen Chelsea. Ishua decided to add some magic circles around the tree to serve as a storehouse of light attribute mana. So in cases that the purification function exceeds its capacity again, this will greatly help the tree contain it. Before the queen can even thank Ishua fully, the girls start coming in. Surprised to see Little and Mythia, Ishua was speechless at first. They then catch up a little until Queen Chelsea finally speaks. With such a genuine tone, Queen Chelsea extends her deepest gratitude towards Ishua and everyone who helped them. To pay them back for their hard work, the elven village decided to throw them a wild festival party to enjoy the night of the same day. Queen Chelsea kept on telling Ishua that in case he needed help, she would always be there to help him. But Ishua, being the selfless person that he is, assures the queen that this party was more than enough for him. In fact, Ishua really admired the queen's strength and determination, as he knew it wasn't easy for her as well. As everyone went on to enjoy the party, Ishua himself also tried to join in with the fun. But things went a bit too crazy when Arya ended up drinking so much, and Lillian indirectly confessed her feelings towards Ishua. But nonetheless, it was still one of the best nights Ishua had had in his life. The next day, since their work here is officially done, Ishua and the others are planning to head back to Norbish village. However, after what Alan just did yesterday, Ishua thinks they must report the incident to the king himself as soon as possible. That is why over the next few days, Ishua and the others will be making their journey to the royal capital. After a few hours or so, the group has finally made it back to the newcomers' town, Norbish. Immediately, Ishua went on to submit his report about their quest to the guild's receptionist. After reading it, the receptionist went crazy about the story. No one really imagined it would be possible for the world tree to deteriorate, so hearing such stories will literally shock anyone. At that moment, the receptionist starts to wonder just what kind of human Ishua really is. It is not common for people to easily defeat a rank orc king, let alone save the sacred world tree. But Ishua, being the humble person that he is, still answered the question with the same answer he almost told everyone, terming himself as a regular manaporter. Regardless of that, no one can really deny the fact that he is such a humble person who achieved heroic results despite whatever title it is that he has. While everyone is literally celebrating Lillian and Ishua's group's win, Alan outside is screaming like a child. He starts telling everyone that he is the real hero and that Ishua, Mythia, Arya, and Little are his members, so their achievements are his too. Mythia immediately calls Alan out, telling him that he was the one who banished them. On top of that, he almost dealt the finishing blow to the world tree. Seeing how things have worsened, Ishua is starting to regret not leaving Alan outside the city. So, without any choice, Ishua decides that maybe it's finally time to head to the royal capital now and report to the king. After a few hours, they finally made it to the capital, and let's just say the king was happy to see everyone once again. However, he was a little disappointed at Alan for acting rashly. But what really made the king wonder was why Alan went ahead alone and made things worse. Without hesitation, Arya revealed to the king that it was because Alan kicked Ishua out of the group, which eventually led to the three leaving as well in the end. Hearing such revelations made the king angry. He never really thought Alan was this naive to think he would be able to survive without Ishua's wisdom and mana. To make it worse, Lil and Mythia also didn't want to back him up. In fact, they even exposed him for his lies in front of the king. They also revealed that when things got dangerous, Alan tried to sacrifice Mythia to escape. Now that the king has finally realized what a grave sin Alan just did, Alan is stripped of his status as a hero. Alan then starts to assure the king that he would definitely make a comeback as long as Ishua and the others join him. However, even if Alan managed to do so, that would not make any changes at all. As it turns out, the real reason why he is being stripped of his hero status is that his performance as a hero hasn't improved at all. On top of that, the fact that Alan also gave the king false reports now makes him a criminal. As Alan gets dragged out of the room, the king then tells Ishua that he will give him a proper domain and title. Ishua, a commoner, truly appreciates the king's offer, but he would rather stay as an adventurer for the rest of his life and continue striving to reach greater heights on his own. On top of that, traveling like this with Arya and everyone is the most fun Ishua has ever had. Such humbling words really moved the king's heart. So, in respect for Ishua, the king decided to let him choose what he wanted. After that meeting, as they are now about to head back to Norbish town, Lillian and Diana are contemplating whether they should ask Ishua to take them to his party. But before Lillian can even ask him, Mythia rushes towards Ishua. Just like Lillian and Diana, Mythia and Little also wanted to join Ishua's party no matter what. After hearing that, Ishua was a bit stunned, considering Little and Mythia should be in high demand right now. But since they really liked to join him, Ishua had no choice but to take them in. Now that Mythia and Little have finally earned their spot in Ishua's party, Lillian starts to get nervous all of a sudden. Although shy about it, Lillian gathered up all her courage and went on to ask Ishua, sounding like a little girl. Since Ishua had also witnessed how amazing, loyal, and kind Diana and Lillian are, Ishua didn't have a hard time deciding whether he should take them in or not. With that, a new party has been born. Meanwhile, in the Demon King's castle, the four heavenly kings are discussing their failed plan on conquering the world using the world tree. After witnessing what happened, the heavenly king's attention is now towards Ishua. The fact that a human like Ishua managed to cure such a massive tree using his magic, even the Demon King himself is now curious about him. Now that Ishua and Lillian have teamed up, the heavenly kings are planning to push through with brute strength from now on. However, the Demon King thinks that even though they are fighting head-on, they can't afford to waste their strength at all. Their opponent is the hero's party, so the Demon King thinks it would be better if they make a fellow human hero fight them instead. And the Demon King immediately found the right person to do the job. Going back to Ishua and the others, they have been traveling for a week now since they formed the party. Their memorable first quest was to transport the White Dew Elixir to the Amdia territory. This territory is the same territory Little and Mythia were staying in after being banished by Alan. Since the two personally know the lord of the territory, Ishua let them guide their way. But before they even arrived, Little and Mythia informed Ishua about what they knew of the place. According to them, when they arrived, they found people suffering from an unknown illness. At the time, it was just the lord's daughter and a few servants. But the fact that the territory needed so much medicine, this time around just shows things have gone worse indeed. So when they finally arrive at the lord's mansion, the party hurries to ensure the medicines arrive in time. As they finally got off, Mythia and Little were happy to see that the lord's daughter is now doing well. However, the strange disease has become widespread within the territory. Even the doctors within the territory are unable to determine the cause. The only thing that works is the highest rank healing potion, the White Dew Elixir, which can even heal fatal wounds. That is also the reason why there has been an increase in quests to collect Ringetsu herbs. After hearing that, Ishua immediately volunteered to collect more for the territory. Meanwhile, Lillian then expresses her opinion about the matter. She knows for a fact that there's a limit to what can be achieved by just administering medicine. So to know more about this strange disease, Lillian is asking for the Lord's permission to let them investigate. Eventually, when the Lord permitted them, Lillian couldn't help but feel bad for the party. Their only quest was to deliver the medicine, but because she ended up asking if they could investigate, their work has now been doubled. But Ishua admired Lillian for that. As a hero, it was natural for Lillian to do more for the people, and Ishua totally understands that. But now that they are already at it, Arya wanted to know why Lillian wanted to investigate in the first place. According to Lillian, when she defeated Ifrita, she remembered that the Heavenly Kings had some sinister plan to conquer the world. Although the Heavenly Kings were referring to the World Tree, which had already happened, Ishua and the others couldn't help but worry about it. So when they finally arrived at the first delivery destination, the group immediately decided to distribute the medicine and start investigating. When they got to the infirmary, they were shocked to see a number of people infected by this strange disease. Based on their calculations, the total number of patients is around 100 more or less. Because the cause is unknown, the only thing they can do is keep casting healing magic and leave it up to the person's own recovery ability. So, although this is not Ishua's field of expertise, he still decided to examine some patients himself. He approached the first patient, a frail young boy whose body drained of vitality, and placed his hand gently against the man's forehead. There, beneath his touch, Ishua could feel the currents of mana energy flowing within the boy's fragile body. He's surprised to find out that the mana within this patient churned and clashed, thrown into chaos by a disturbance unnatural and violent in origin. Without hesitation, Ishua extended his power into the disturbed streams of mana. His control was precise. Slowly, he adjusted each portion of energy with practiced care. The imbalance began to settle and the distorted flow calmed. The villagers who witnessed this magic were shocked. For the longest time now, the whole village has been relying on the dew elixir for soothing the painful symptoms this unknown disease has given them. However, to see that Ishua manages to remove the patient's pain with just a flick of his finger is indeed something everyone is not expecting to witness at all. But aside from Ishua, the girls also did their part to help the village. Lillian, in particular, went on to investigate the dark mana that is causing all of this, while Diana and Mythia help with the interviews to know more about the origin of the disease. Seeing how the whole group is working together for the betterment of everyone is something that flutters Ishua's heart. In a few hours or so, Ishua managed to heal everyone in the village. For the first time in a while, the sick people all woke up and looked like they gained a new lifeline of energy. The people of the village may call it a miracle, but for Ishua, it's just a small thing he knows he can do for the community. Since the news of Ishua saving the World Tree has also rapidly spread across the country, witnessing him do another miraculous work made the whole village cheer in awe. Ishua, being the humble person that he is, immediately stated that the villagers are just exaggerating. Ishua was not afraid to tell everyone that it wasn't just him who saved the World Tree. While everyone is celebrating Ishua and the group's success in helping the village. Meanwhile, outside the town, a group of criminals is seen plotting some kind of evil scheme. They are planning to sell some fake cure-all medicine with side effects to the Harvest Village in hopes that it would inflict more pain on the villagers. And what's surprising about this is the fact that Alan, the once great hero, is now part of a criminal group. Now the question is, will this mark the beginning of a war between the fallen hero Alan and the then manaporter turned into hero Ishua? Comment hero if you're eager to find out in our next video. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. As always, thanks for watching.